Hello there, I'm Adam Forbes. I'm the host of the Corporate Escapology podcast and the author of Corporate Escapology, the book, which is out on July the 2nd and is available now to pre-order on Amazon. Today, my guest is Luke Flunder. He is known on TikTok as the Wine Guy, and he's got 200,000 followers on TikTok and 120,000 followers on Instagram. This time last year, he only had 1,000 on Instagram, so his growth has been extraordinary. He started off in the wine industry working for Majestic, and he joined their graduate training scheme. He learned all the knowledge about wine, as well as developed some really great commercial entrepreneurial skills there. But after 5 years, he decided he wanted a different pathway. And he took a very bold decision to start his own business, initially with a hotel he was looking at, and then eventually with a shop, an online shop that he was building, and pop-ups and various things. When you meet Luke, you'll see this entrepreneurial energy that radiates from him that you wonder, could he ever really have worked in the confines of a corporate? But he did, and that's where he really learnt his trade. So let's meet Luke now. Hey, Luke, thanks for joining me today on the Corporate Escapology podcast. It's really great to meet you and to hear a bit more about your story. So tell us, where did it all begin, this love of wine and this passion that you've got for wine? And how did you kind of build a career around it? How did you start to?
Well, I thank you for having me, by the way, Adam, much appreciated. My journey started once I left school. Before that, my parents only drank the two same wines. They had them in the cupboard at all times. So we didn't have a very explorative view into the world there. When I left school, I went traveling. I was very fortunate to get a round the world ticket for a very good price. And the first stop was South Africa. And the first point of call was a winery visit. In fact, multiple winery visit. And I guess some people like motorbikes. As soon as I went on that tour, just everything surrounding it tapped into my soul. And I just got it straight away.
You're quite young getting into wine. I mean, most people that age are like into beer. In fact, these days more into spirits even than beers. But so it wasn't coming from your parents, that interest. Was it just almost chance that you'd landed in some wine region and just went for it, or did you have an inkling there may be something there that was going to spark some interest?
Well, at that stage, I didn't look at it for being a career. Really, it was just an interest and fascination, really. And I didn't see that particularly as a route I was going to go down. It was just one that I was going to enjoy as a hobby. So yeah, I started, I guess, in the game early, and if I hadn't gone on that trip, probably I would have got into it some way, but who knows?
So when you were on your travels like that, did you go and visit a number of different wineries in different regions that you were traveling, or was it just focused on South Africa?
Yeah, it was just South Africa to start with, because we did have a pre-student budget. Well, we couldn't go mental around the wineries. But everywhere we went, so we traveled to about 15 different countries, and we would sample the wines from each wine-producing country. There wasn't too much on offer in Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia, but we touched down in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
In America. So yeah, we tried to sample everything wherever we went. And
so it wasn't sparking a career for you, but it was certainly sparking a passion. So by the time you came back from those travels, what were you thinking? What were your thoughts as to a career? Some stage you're going to have to knuckle down and make some money and start your real life.
As soon after that was when I started down the journalism route, actually. That was, so I had that time of about 2 years before I started at Majestic. The problem with journalism was I didn't see a clear career path for me to really excel in and to get to where I wanted to be, which is ideally, I've always had ambition, so I wanted to be a trailblazer in the industry. So I didn't see that path. So I started looking at different options, and yeah, so that was Majestic came up. Another one was Transport for London, their management scheme, which I was actually pretty close to going into, again, a clear progression route. But Majestic was really the only other one on the radar. And I started to speak to family friends who were actually in the industry, and they gave their insights, and it just matched everything, really. My love for food and wine, of course, but that trainee program actually, I could see myself making my way up it. And I was at a time of my life where I did need to start concentrating a little bit and making sure, I wasn't flitting between jobs, left, right, center.
Okay. And so what sort of things did you do on that kind of training course then? They taught you presumably a lot about wine, but what other kinds of things were you learning?
So it was very thorough, and I'm always very thankful that I went through that process. I don't know if it's the same now, but it was a well-respected graduate program.
The goal is that you're in a shop and working your way to run that shop, and I guess then become a regional manager of shops. And is that the kind of pathway that's sort of set for you in Majestic on a scheme like this?
They were very clear that, yes, that is a pathway, but you had the commercial side, and you also had head office where they were regularly recruited from the shop floor. And Majestic, the beauty of Majestic was, it was quite a skilled workforce they had operating on the shop floor. So that meant they had to have less staff because, we could manage probably more, and we were a little bit more loyal.
And so what sort of things, so how long did you stay there in the end?
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years. And so what did you do during those 5 years then? So after the program, did it end after a certain time, or were you always on it?
Always on it, yeah. So there was always different stages. Regional manager would have been, to apply for a regional manager position would have been the next step for me, which wasn't right for myself. Because retail is detail, and I was never, transfixed on the absolute, everything, which I think you have to be to get to that level and be successful. So yeah, we had the management program for the senior store team leaders, but my journey was very much trainee manager into assistant manager, senior store manager. And what I did well in the company was grow the commercial side of each store. And that was a great thing about Majestic. We had real flexibility and autonomy on driving those sales. And I found that was pretty easy to do because you had the weight of Majestic's reputation behind you, and you had a really clear and great product to work with. And so I found it quite comfortable approaching businesses and stocking venues, for instance, bars, restaurants, also winning business like the Hampton Court Flower Show and one-off pieces like that.
Right, okay. But you were still running that from an individual store, were you? The business development you were doing was still run out of your store. Wow, that's really interesting, isn't it? So, I mean, you could be quite entrepreneurial in a role. Mm-hmm. Perhaps more than most people going into retail would imagine that, they would think things are locked down a lot more than they are. But you're given a kind of space, I suppose, and autonomy in the kind of roles that you were in, which I'm sure has helped you later as well.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's why my first management position was rather thrown in the deep end, but it was at the Canary Wharf branch. And
a lot of wine drunk there, I'm sure.
Yeah, but also a lot of commercial activity, to the banks and stuff for their Christmas parties, and so setting up those, and doing tastings around the wharf was fun times.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, but again, you got to the point. How quickly did you get to the point where you started to think, I'm feeling like this may not be right for me? And I've seen in some of your posts, you talk about how you realized you were thinking a bit differently from others in the wine trade. So when was that starting to percolate to the point that you thought, I might need to do something about this rather than just feel it?
Yeah, so that was in my last year, really, at Majestic. I would have, I was quite happy to stay. I didn't want to stay in retail, face-to-face retail for all my life. So I knew as soon as I could get out of that, really, and achieve what I wanted to achieve, then that was the plan. And yeah, things started to change at Majestic. I can remember we were given scripts that we had to use when customers came in, which makes sense from a commercial perspective. I understand it. New management they wanted us speaking to customers differently, and then we would get recorded by mystery shoppers.
Oh, golly.
And if you didn't follow the script, you'd have to go to head office and sit a course. And of course, that wasn't my style.
No.
And yeah, little things like that. And then talking about the commercial point of view, they changed that. So they started making it central. So they took it away from some of the stores, and naturally, to make that a slicker process. So they had a commercial separate team. So that took it away in the store that I was in. So it just became retail, and little adjustments like that just changed the game. And my philosophy is very much adapt to change and move with it. But it was really to the detriment of how I built up my career there. So I thought then it was time to leave.
Yeah, I could see that. And I suppose that's what I was imagining it would have been like. So I was surprised that you had all that kind of autonomy go off and just new business. But yeah, then I guess, yeah, it's a sort of evolution of some businesses, isn't it, down that route? Okay, so in that last year, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind? Like, okay, I'm not going to say this isn't my long-term future, but I guess that passion for wine must have been pretty strong with you, that you probably were wondering, am I going to have to give that up if I do something different? So what kind of ideas had you had?
Well, off the back of that, I had generated a rapport with my customers, and also I'd grown the businesses as where I was at. So naturally, that gave me a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm doing this, well, I can do it for a company, but can I do it for myself?
Okay, so you went straight to that. Can I do it for myself, this?
Yeah, and I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So it was always in the background of my mind to start something off myself. And, I loved my time at Majestic. I loved working as part of a team and, the bigger teams. And I miss that to this day, really, because it was a great environment. But at the same time, I wanted to, start myself. And yeah, so that was really the next step. I knew that I wanted to be at the helm of something.
Great. And so you talked about confidence, but it's riskier than a salary coming in, even if, even if it's not what you want to do necessarily, just that stability that the salary is bringing, takes the pressure off. So what kind of risks were you thinking about? Or were you just like totally into opportunity? This is all going to be upside? Or what was the sort of state of mind were you in when you were thinking about doing it for yourself and going alone?
Yeah, I think I was still young enough to be a bit naive to the realities of life that were coming. Absolutely. So, and of course, I had the confidence. I was also acutely aware that I was still a very, very small fish. And although I'd learned a lot at Majestic, I still had many gaps in my profile to take on my own project.
Yeah. What did you do to go out on your own?
So what I had lined up before I had left was there was a hotel near my parents who lived in Suffolk at the time. I'm not from Suffolk. There was a hotel that came up for sale. It was a successful hotel, and it reported really good net profit, and the operation was quite streamlined and slick. So we looked at the accounts, we looked at the operation, and we thought, well, myself and my wife, or girlfriend at the time, Natasha, we thought this could be us. It was leasehold. And so we had our ideas, and we've always were interested in hospitality and the wine side of it. We thought we could bring it all together, and we put a real plan together over a few months. And the problem is, when a business is doing well like that, obviously there's more than one people interested. Yeah. So it turned out there were quite a few people interested in it. Our bid got accepted, but we didn't get accepted to take on the hotel, basically.
Okay. But it shifted you quite a long way from salaried employee to visualizing yourself in running your own business like that, and jumping into hospitality as well. So taking what you've known and sort of evolving it a bit to broaden out into a bigger offer that you could make. So that sort of jumped there. Did that then spur you on, or did you think, okay, maybe it was a lucky escape and I'll withdraw? What was the next step?
So the recurring thing that came back to me always was, because that was a tough stage. I'd left the security, kind of said I'm moving out of London. And for the past 5 years, I'd had a very set goal in mind, was to get as far as I could at the company ranks. So I was quite tenacious in what I was doing. And suddenly I had another goal. And then when that fell flat and I was out of London, it was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, where's my purpose gone? And the thing throughout that process was that wherever I went, whatever I did, I was talking about wine. And it was then my friends and family were really prompting me, saying, wine is your thing. It's what you're passionate about, and it all aligned really. And I said, well, enough. I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to wine.
Okay, that's a big goal, isn't it? And so what did that look like then? What did you do? How did you do that?
So yeah, good question. So I'd done my level 3 wine spirits education trust qualification. So the next one up is the diploma. So I said, right, I'm going to get my diploma.
Okay.
So that's going to give me the background, and I'm going to do what I did well and start from kind of the bottom and start my own business, selling wine. So that was the start of that.
And where did you sell it?
So the idea was to sell it online.
Right. Yeah.
So do tasting, pop-up tastings. And we thought that certainly was a great way to grow the business. I was familiar and felt comfortable with doing that. And so we went about, the model was, start spreading the word through tastings. And I actually started putting on tastings for free around the area.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee shops.
You stayed around Suffolk?
I stayed around Suffolk.
Okay.
Because we'd made that decision to move out. So started just trying to build up a network. And that came with its own challenges for sure. Because I come from the Northeast originally. And I'd moved to a place where I had absolutely no connections. Mm-hmm. And retrospectively, family connections can be a great thing. So I was out on my own, plodding away.
What was that like?
Yeah, it was, you realize as well, part of my success at Majestic was because I was behind the Majestic name. So it was a grind. It was a grind, and you're questioning things. And then COVID hit. And suddenly Mr. P had to type in, who couldn't go to the supermarket or wine society, typed in local wine merchant. We were at the top. It was our busiest time ever. The whole world changed for us. And it's the busiest, even through my Majestic days, those first month of lockdown was the busiest month of my life. It was no sleep, packing, out and because we're in essential business. So it wasn't in our business plan, but it was. And then, of course, we kept those contacts from there. So,
right. And did you notice something going on there as well with that they were picking you? Because there were others. I mean, they could have got their wine delivered from Waitrose or from Majestic, I guess. Was there something about you that they were interested in, and were you able to convey that in a kind of lockdown?
Yeah, well, actually, people with the demographic here, a lot of people couldn't actually visit the supermarkets, and a lot of those online merchants, the supply had stopped, so they actually couldn't click on. The waiting times were 3 weeks, and they wanted wine. Of course, everyone wanted
You wanted it.
Yeah, so it was out of necessity. I could say it was a clever marketing trick. It was literally people typing into Google who has wine, but then it was about forging the relationships once, because we could have just gone and we were really, always spent time just to give that little bit more, and that was generated relationships to.
Yeah, because it can be a commodity, right? And especially on just typing in cheapest whatever bottle, and maybe you'll find it. So the relationship bit comes by the trust, and I guess some authority as well, that you're talking about. You're conveying some information that they didn't know, that means they're, I don't know, intrigued by the wine, or they've got a story to tell somebody else about the wine too. So how are you getting that sort of personality across when you were presumably masked up, just handing it?
All from my Majestic days, but all were personally written tasting notes.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I'd written them. I'd written every one. We didn't have a huge range, so it was manageable to a certain extent, but it was in we printed them off, and it was in handwriting font. And so it just conveyed a personal touch. And it was, I'd tried these wines and I'd written them down. And I even said on the notes, at the end of one of the notes, it said, "Apologies, I wrote this when I was a bottle in." And someone would send a message, a text message. And also, leaving your number. Someone would text me and saying, "Can we have a top up?" And it was just meeting whatever needs, our mantra was just say yes. Just say yes. And also it was, just being aware, if someone's ordered 24 bottles and they've ordered, 12 quite boring Chardonnay, then I'd put in a bottle of something that I thought would blow their mind and say, "Have this on us," and then lo and behold, next time, "Can we have 12 of those brilliant wine you gave us?" So, all the little tricks. But
yeah, so you were pushing them, in terms of encouraging them to explore beyond what they knew. It just takes a bit of longer and takes a bit of trust, I think, doesn't it? And so pop-ups online, and then social media. Tell us about the social media. You can brag that you've got an awful lot of followers. There's something you're doing that is working very, very well on social media. What pushed you towards that? Did you have a plan for it? How on earth did that happen?
So when I was at Majestic, I started an Instagram account, and I just took a picture of a bottle, and explained about the bottle in the text. And it started to really pop and gain traction. I kind of lost sight with it a little bit because I was still at Majestic and doing different things. But that was the infancy of Instagram, really. And at that time, I didn't really see the value in keeping on what I was doing. Anyway, I got introduced to TikTok early in 2019, late 2019. And I was just, this platform has to do well. I just couldn't see any other way, because it's instant, in your face, and it's just entertainment. And I'd just seen nothing like it before. And I just saw it going the same way as Instagram was going. Anything that's going to have attention at the start, everyone was saying it's dancing around. But I was just thinking, there is nobody on this app talking about wine. Nobody. So I'm going to try it, for better or worse. And I didn't really take it seriously that first year. Sporadic videos, they didn't do well. But then the more I looked at TikTok, the more I kept on seeing the controversy in the news. No one still knew what it was. I just said, right, I'm going to focus on this for a year, 6 months. If I'm still getting 100 views in 6 months, then put it to one side. But that's when I started doing a video every other day.
Every other day, okay. And what sort of content were you producing?
Random. So some would be not speaking, just filming me packing a box. And at this time, I was thinking about promotion for my wine business. So I was thinking, how do we sell more wine? That was kind of the, thought behind what I was doing. And then one lunchtime, I was about to go and get a tuna sandwich. And I thought, right, I'm going to record one of my videos that I'm doing. I'd done about a week of this video every other day. I had a bottle of Purple Angel, which comes in a nice box. So Purple Angel, iconic Chilean wine, £65 a bottle. Put the box on the table, recorded me on, I think it was the Diet Coke can, propping up the phone, recorded it, me opening the box, showing the wine, and then as I was just before I got my sandwich, I did a voiceover saying, this is the Purple Angel. It's the John Deere of the wine world. And went to lunch, came back, and it had 200,000 views. And I was like...
That's all you'd said on it. You'd added no further value.
Yeah. And, it took me 5 minutes. And then it really started popping further. So, of course, at that time, you think, well, anyone can go viral, really. A dog tripping someone up can go viral. So don't get ahead of myself. But, of course, naturally, you're thinking, wow, this has some legs in it, for want of a better word. And then I started shooting videos, did the same thing. Of course, that absolutely bombed. And then a couple of weeks later, I did another one, and it spiked again. And then from then, just started to weave my way into how I could get attention really on the app, and started just growing and growing and growing. And then, yeah, the thing is, it really, if you look back at my timeline, there was a time when I was getting, a lot of views because no one else doing it, in the hundreds of thousands very regularly. Yeah.
Incredible. And now you've got 200,000 or something. It was on TikTok and 120,000 on Instagram. I mean, it's kind of scary numbers, isn't it? I mean, this is like mega stadiums of people that are choosing to look at your content. And is it translating into business then?
So I don't use it to sell wine, promote wine for a start.
Okay.
Because I could do, and in the early days, Purple Angel, I couldn't have sold enough Purple Angel, but I can't ship to America, and shipping around the country is an absolute nightmare for a small business. Now, I could, if I wanted to, I could have really stepped it up and invested more money in and seen that route, but that wasn't the route I wanted to go down. So that's when I made the decision. This isn't about the wine business. This is about my longevity. This is about me, because that's what people are hopefully interested in. So from the business side of things, that's what we've been navigating through, and leveraging that attention to develop my personal brand and monetize that.
And you're providing a very, very accessible version of wine. I mean, it's fun and it's very simple. It's demystifying a lot of the some of the snobbishness, I suppose, about wine. It's recognizing where there's good wines in surprising places that you might find. It's trying to encourage people to do exactly what you said, trying to explore beyond just the obvious bottles they buy week to week. So it's a different, and maybe that's what you were seeing in Majestic too. This, I'm looking at this differently from other people here, and now you're able to execute that through TikTok and Instagram.
Exactly, and that's it. And going back to Majestic, I knew I saw the world differently, and that's what gave me at least the confidence to know that how I do see it works for some people, because I saw that journey through my customers. Mm-hmm. So I saw they had changed, and they would come in and we would chat on the tasting counter after the store closed for half an hour, and and they, the passion changed for them. So it's a difficult one because the industry has been stuck in its own ways, and it didn't resonate with me, and I just felt so much falseness with it. Of course, we all know wine and, if I can say it, the bullshit that surrounds it. So yeah, I always did see it differently, kind of just trying to see it for what it is and translate that. And it doesn't have to be all this nonsense around it. And I just saw so much of it.
So what do you do? What do you do next with this? So, you've got this Substack newsletter, and you're building a kind of community there. And I see a bit of online, offline there too. So that's maybe is that one of these other revenue streams that you see as a potential use of this huge community you've built up on these platforms?
Yeah. So Substack is, when I talk about what I saw with TikTok, Substack is, for me, it has a lot of potential. It's not like TikTok in the sense of it's not as user-friendly at the moment. But when I'm thinking about where we can go in terms of social media from TikTok, I think things will slow down a bit. And I think if Substack plays its cards right, which I think it is constantly evolving and updating, then I think it has a chance of being a really important marketing tool for businesses, and also bring out more opportunities for individuals with skills and content creators and writers. That's still very much early days for me, Substack, but I see that as a huge opportunity because it keeps everything in one place for me, all the work I'm doing, rather than TikTok being videos. This has, videos, audio and written, and that's a clear timeline of where I'm going. So I quite like that in a world which is, in my world, wine world, which is, can be quite sporadic and different places. So that's one side of it. What I've done, for better or worse, is not partner with any major retailers, which could be a natural choice here. And that could be a long-term partnership. Because at the moment, as far as I can see, certainly in the UK on social media, there's not many who have this bigger reach. So the natural thing is, and of course I've spoken to a few, set up a deal with a retailer. And the natural side for that would be obviously maybe one of the online merchants. But I've always been reticent so far to go down that route, because then that puts me really in one. Yeah. And the holy grail is really to stay independent. Yeah. So then short-term working, again, I could have chosen to work with certain brands, and just do one-off adverts. But again, I've refrained from doing that as well, because once I start doing too much of that and going down that route, it's going to potentially affect my proposition. So, for instance, next month, I've got a really interesting partnership with Wines of Canada, Wines of British Columbia. And that's an important milestone for myself because, that's separated me from retailers. It's a country whose wines I love, and an ambassadorial role like that is quite attractive.
That's interesting. So you bypass the retailers and you go direct to the suppliers, and maybe have, or even regions, and have relationships potentially there. I mean, it just sounds really exciting. I think you got your grounding and your training and your credibility and everything through Majestic, but it has spawned all these opportunities for you. And of course, there was huge risk there. Many people would like to do what you've done, but would stay within the confines of Majestic. It would just be too risky. Maybe they've got to a point age-wise and responsibility-wise that they couldn't make some of those decisions either. But also it could have just been mindset that would have prevented them moving. So you took that big risk, and of course it seems to be paying off. But you've seized lots of these opportunities. You've tried them, you've experimented, you've seen things that have worked and not worked. And And in a way, these opportunities are almost creating more opportunities too. So it's sort of feeding itself. I mean, it's a totally different path, isn't it? And it couldn't be more different than a job where you're paid a salary and you've got very defined role and delivery targets and everything, to a world that you honestly don't know what it could be like in a year's time.
Exactly. And I started this when I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I didn't have two kids, one 6 months old and one 2 years old. And that's, of course, they're game changers. And, we have our house out here in Suffolk, and you've got to be careful, obviously, you've got to be careful because the market can change, my popularity can change. So you're always on the line. And so I think it takes a certain personality type to want that.
But what I really like about your story is that way that you've got that grounding there. And as you said, there were times when you felt, you've lost that identity that you were carrying with you, called Majestic, that gave you immediate recognition and credibility when you went in there. And you've now gone and built that yourself. So that independence of another company to create your credibility and your identity and, the association, you've done that all yourself now, and you've proven it with this enormous following as well. So I think it's a great, inspiring story that showed people you can do this. And I particularly really like the purpose. There's a sort, wine maybe it's not maybe purpose driven like some other things, but you've clearly got a very strong purpose of the things you will do and not do. And I think that is really what's guiding you. And I suspect that is what's making you very successful too, because you're very clear about how you want this business to play out, and the things you are quick fixes and quick wins and quick ways to generate cash are potentially going to harm you in the future. And you're very clear to steer away from those things and commercialize very thoughtfully, rather than just cash in the short term, which I think is also can be a temptation for a lot of entrepreneurs. So I think it's a great story. I'm really pleased we met, and thanks so much for spending time this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and hearing my journey. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.